Hi everyone, Toby here, and I'm delighted to introduce this mini-series on urban preparedness in a small space. And I'm aware for a lot of people that are interested in building their resilience or preparedness against a reasonably foreseeable circumstance that can occur in their area, a lot of the thing that constrains them in their thought process or desire to start enabling some preparation is two key factors. And the first is normally financial, how much is it going to cost me, and the second is, if I'm going to get all this stuff, where am I actually physically going to put it? And that's a very, very legitimate concern for many people, especially in inner city living nowadays, where the trend towards sort of small apartments has far overtaken the desire to sort of have a house or the cost effectiveness of doing so. Now, what I want to do in this introduction, as well as just laying out the premise of what we're going to be covering in this brief mini-series, is just to introduce some of the basic approaches I take when it comes to urban preparedness or resilience. And the big thing for me, whilst I'm aware that a lot of the attention goes towards the sort of dramatic, big-scale disaster stuff, I really don't like indulging in the fear marketing aspect of urban preparedness. So for me, the sort of stock phrase I use when I talk to people about preparedness is I like to really dig down into the detail of looking at low cost to no cost solutions to reasonably foreseeable problems. Now, I'm not saying those reasonably foreseeable problems won't have big impact. In fact, we normally measure them in short, mid and long-term problems, short being less than 1 day, mid a number of days, long now progressing into 2 weeks plus. And eminently there's examples daily worldwide of problems occurring at those three levels of impact, short, mid and long term. So I'm not ruling out the disaster stuff, but I'm just saying in the beginning that can be a little bit intimidating, overwhelming or even abstract for people to kind of adhere to the idea that I need to get ready for this. So far better to actually look to prepare for the short term stuff in the beginning, the simple the power outage, the fact that you might just get ill and have 2 or 3 days off work or not feel like leaving your apartment or house, a period of disruption to the infrastructure, whether that be due to a weather system or some other thing, and therefore the shops aren't supplied as well for 1 or 2 days. The lower level, not so dramatic but very regularly occurring stuff. Now if we start to prepare for those, not only are we covering our highly likely contingencies, but it's just giving us a softer entry into this idea of not living on a just-in-time model, that I never have anything around me, I can always just nip to the store and pick up whatever it is I need, but I'm actually just going to have a little bit of depth in the things I have stored in my apartment or similar living space. That just means, should there be an interruption to my regular lifestyle routine of, in the beginning, 1 to 3 days, then I can really cope with that without too much problem. So that's the premise for this mini-series. The apartment that I'm filming in right now is 15 metres squared, 45 square feet. So it is small. It's definitely a lot smaller than the home I prepare in back in northern Scandinavia, but then that's good because a lot of times I need to be applying these lessons because I travel a lot, I'm in hotel rooms or small apartments, and odds on the things I'm going to have to deal with are going to happen while I'm actually travelling as opposed to when I'm at home. So please understand, this isn't just an example of a way of doing it, it is that, but it's also actually teaching the lessons of how I personally do this when I'm travelling, when I'm touring, when I'm staying in different places, from anywhere of 2 to 3 days to actually in some circumstances 2 to 3 months. Okay? Now for the introduction, what I want to do is just cover the 6 key considerations we're going to be looking at. And these really lift themselves nicely from our wilderness survival priorities and cross over into the urban survival, urban preparedness sort of things. Now we know our 4 wilderness priorities are our fire, shelter, food and water. But now we have 6 priorities in the urban environment, so we add to that medical and defensive. Self-defense, protection, whatever category you want to put that in, and we'll be expanding on that in some detail. Okay, so let's just repeat those. We're looking at fire, shelter, food, water, medical, defence. 6 key priorities I need to address when I anticipate I'm going to have some sort of interruption to my routine lifestyle. Now what I want to tackle just directly in this introduction is the shelter priority. The fact of the matter is this mini-series is looking at we're going to be staying in place during whatever situation may occur. Right? So I'm not looking at evacuation or exit strategies in this particular series. That'll come separately. So my shelter is effectively the place that I find myself staying in. And all I need to really factor into that is the facilities my shelter has, harmonising with the other priorities, especially defensive, and basically the anticipated weather patterns. If I'm in a very hot environment and I have a power cut, how am I going to cope with that? If I'm in a very cold environment and the same happens, how am I going to cope with that? So when we look at shelter, aside from the fact I've got sort of 4 walls, windows, a door and a roof over my head, I just need to be factoring in dealing with extremes of temperature. So if it's very, very cold or I anticipate a cold spell, do I have, you know, warm weather clothing, extra blankets and things like that that mean I can keep myself warm even without a healthy power supply, or indeed any power supply. The same transversely if I'm in a very hot environment, do I have the things I need to keep cool? This can be sort of heavyweight or reflective kind of curtains or materials on the windows to kind of stop the light penetrating and warming the apartment. You know, manual devices such as fans and things like that, just to kind of help me cool off in those circumstances. Now again, this is an entry-level video series, so what I don't want to do is go off in too much detail. I'm just going to give you some basic things that I want you actually to think about and start addressing in your own mind that will lead you to the sort of preparations you feel that you want to do. Okay? So that's all we're really going to talk about on shelter. The defensive aspect is going to come in that particular section on how I would potentially look to kind of harden, for want of a better word, my shelter to mean that I feel sort of safe and secure while I'm in there. Right? So we've covered that. As we move through the mini-series, we're going to look at our other points. Now, just before we move on, please understand the whole point of this mini-series for me is to give you not only some information, but some scenarios and some things to think about. Quite simply, preparedness is going to be an exceptionally individual subject, depending on your circumstances, your budget, your environment, and the things that concern you, the threats that you perceive you want to prepare for. So I'm, as I say, not going to drill down into minute detail in each one. This is going to be an overview series, and I just want you to basically think through your circumstances and start to apply the things that we discuss. And absolutely, I'd love to hear from you, so please do feel free to comment below on this channel, or go over to my Facebook page and start a discussion thread there if you have any queries, questions or thoughts or experiences you want to share. Okay, so let's get started. Looking at our next 5 priorities. So we've covered shelter, we're now moving to fire, water, food, medical and defence.